Good afternoon, University of Michigan graduate class of 2017. My name is Paul Rohde. I'm an economic historian, but more importantly here, I'm the chair of the economics department. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's department ceremony. 2017 is a special year. It's the year that we celebrate the 200th anniversary of the founding of the University of Michigan. That's when it began as a legal entity and received a plot of land in Detroit. The bicentennial is a little controversial because the university didn't really get started until 1837 in Ann Arbor, and so there is some controversy, but university decides why not celebrate both dates. So expect to come in 20 years and celebrate the Ann Arbor birthday. 1880 is another year of note. It is the year the economics department began, and so for 63 years, or 43 if you're a 37er, but for 63 years the university went along without an economics department, tried to find its way. The first PhD was granted in 1890. That isn't to say that the person took 10 years. The person got their bachelorette here in 1886 and then completed in 1890, so our guess is 4 years. The person who won it was named Frederick Charles Hicks, so you can keep that in memory. The dissertation was not a 3-essay thing. It was, or at least not as we can see from the title. The title was Foreign Trade in the United States. Another dissertation from the era was called A Theory of Transportation. So you get these big, big topics. In the first decade, we had 12 master's students graduate and 7 PhDs. Our pace has picked up a little bit. We have 21 MAE students this year and 25 doctorates. So it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the class to join Frederick Charles Hicks as a recipient of a graduate degree at the University of Michigan, and my great pleasure to turn things over to Linda Tizar, Director of Graduate Studies. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, and let me join Paul in welcoming all of you, graduates, parents. I think there may be some grandparents and lots of relatives and friends and maybe even some children in the audience today. So congratulations to you too. This is a big day and a great day to celebrate. So this event is to recognize the hard work, the creativity, and the dedication that's reflected in the doctoral degrees that have been earned by our graduates. And what a great-looking group of graduates. You guys clean up pretty well, I gotta say. So, I know that the research embodied in the dissertations that are written by this group of students has come at great sacrifice, not just sacrifice on their part, but their families and friends. Late nights at the library, in the labs, staring at the computer screen, trying to get the code to work, deriving formulas. In fact, many of you, hopefully not you anymore, but many of you out there have been wondering what in the world they've been doing. So today is a chance for you to hear a little bit, just a little bit, but maybe a bit of a description about the kind of work that these students have accomplished and a bit about the great things that they're about to go on to do. So I'm going to keep this very short and stop talking so that I leave time so that we have space in the program for you to hear about their work. But I do want to make two very quick announcements. One is I would like to announce that we have a service award, and we would like to recognize someone who has served as GES president, who's been very engaged in the department and done all kinds of work kind of keeping the class together, and I think all of you will recognize this person's accomplishments. So if Salma could come up and receive a service recognition award. She doesn't know she's getting it, so this is your life moment.
Thank you so much. I was waiting for somebody else to walk on the stage because I didn't know that way, this way.
Oh, we have the award. Oh, yes, I have the award.
Thank you so much.
This is for you.
This is very unexpected. I really appreciate it.
Well, we
Thank you
appreciate
so
everything
much.
you've done.
Thank you. Well, thank you, and thank you to my fellow service tripartite members.
And the last announcement I want to make, because I won't have the microphone again, is that I've tried to start a tradition. I'm trying to push this tradition, and it's only just getting going by little bits. But you may think you've already earned your dissertations. You may think when you get the sign from Rackham that you get the notification that you're done. You're not really done. You're not done until you send me a coffee mug from the university or the institute where you will be working next year, because I want to have on display kind of a visual image that shows where all of our students and all of our alum are out there in the world. So remember that, and I will hound you about it if I don't receive one in the next few weeks. And with that, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to hand the floor over to Yeliz, who's going to be announcing the names of the doctoral students and the advisors. And I'd like you, the advisor and the doctoral student, to come up, and then your advisor will say a word or two, brief word or two, about your dissertation.
Hi, I'm very honored to be able to announce my fellow colleagues' names. So we're gonna first start off with Jacob Bastian, and Martha Bailey is gonna speak for him.
Hi, it's fun to get to lead off. This is going to be I look forward to hearing about everyone else's dissertations. I get to rave about a few students today. And Jacob I've known, I think, since his very first year in graduate school. We go way back, where Jacob came up to me and told me, no, even, it was PhD preview day. He said, I want to do work with you. I had no idea he was serious. Most students come here and change their mind completely about what they want to do, but Jacob stuck with it. We ended up working on papers together for years, and his dissertation ended up being on something very interesting, something I've thought about, and a lot of people have thought about for a long time. So why is it the fact that the United States, women who have children are so much more likely to work than they are in other countries, especially because we have such stingy policies when it comes to paid leave and these types of things? Well, Jacob, after turning over the data, comes up with a novel explanation that really locates a lot of these differences in the earned income tax credit, which incentivizes especially single head of households or mothers to continue working even after they have children. So in some sense, Jacob's dissertation is really path-breaking, and that it looks at a literature that so many people have considered for so long and finds a completely novel and a completely new explanation for something we'd all seen. So I will say Jacob is extremely creative, and he's broken the 6-year norm, and he's getting out of here in 5 years. He's taken a postdoc at the Harris School at the University of Chicago. So congratulations, Jacob.
Okay, next we have Paul Bram, and Hoyt Bleakley is gonna talk for him.
Thanks very much. So I'll start with a personal anecdote, which is a few years back when I was thinking of coming here. People were telling me about what students are working on. One of the first projects that I heard about was, in fact, Paul's work in its early stages. And I thought, wow, what a cool institution this must be, that people are doing such interesting things. And so, thanks for bringing me here and getting a chance to meet you. Paul's work is very interesting. It explores, to some extent, what might be the fundamental theorem of economics, if I were to give it a name, which is, do markets work to kind of move resources around in the right way when they should? And he has this really nice episode that he looked at where he said there are these lotteries for rights to drill in certain places out in Wyoming, and sometimes who wins the right to drill? It's T. Boone Pickens or some wildcatter, and sometimes it's won by the little old lady in Miami, who obviously is not going to do it. And what he does is he has a very nice dissertation tracking how markets work to kind of get these things into the hands of the people who are actually going to use it right. And except for one interesting circumstance, which I'll let you explain afterwards, just to keep them hanging. Very exciting work, very interesting, very relevant to thinking about, how should resources on public lands be distributed. We're very sorry to see him leave, because we'd like to, keep being able to tell these stories about what our students are working on, but of course the next set of students are going to give us those stories as well. Anyway, so Paul is going to Oberlin in Ohio in this summer to practice, also in part I didn't mention, but he's also an accomplished teacher, winning one of the Rackham Awards, as well as being very highly distinguished in that regard. So, and that, you can see that too when he presents, when he talks about his ideas. He's a very clear, precise presenter. I always come out of things understanding things a lot better, and sometimes thinking I wish I'd said it that way. So anyway, let's welcome him into almost doctoralhood. Thank you.
Next, we have Shreyoshi Das with Chris Haas.
Forgot to shake your hands. We'll come and get that.
Okay, so I've known Shreyoshi for quite a while. She actually came to the University of Michigan right after the financial crisis, and so it wasn't that surprising when I found out that she was interested in the intersection of finance and economics. Many people were interested in the intersection of finance and macroeconomics around that time. And her thesis has focused exactly on that area. She's written 3 very, very good papers on finance and economics. 2 of them with senior co-authors from many different places. So there's co-authors at Michigan, co-authors in Cornell, and a co-author at Florida? I think that's right. Yeah, Florida, that's right. And she also has a very nice sole-authored paper which looks at how U.S. monetary policy influences credit conditions in bond markets for sovereign debt, specifically sovereign debt for emerging market economies, which is a very, very nice piece. Actually, the whole body of work is very, very nice, and I expect great things going forward, and I will take all the credit when she does any further great stuff. She's going on next year to a postdoctoral position at Cornell. So she's done very well. Congratulations.
And now we have Austin Davis, and Martha Bailey is going to talk for him.
So I was just reflecting with Austin about how we actually came together, because his dissertation is about sustainable agriculture in Brazil, the mechanization of sugarcane harvesting, and if you know what I work on, it has nothing to do with any of those things. So I should say that it has been a great pleasure to serve on Austin's committee, because I've learned all sorts of things about development and agriculture. And also, one of the things I'll say that impresses me the most about Austin's work is that it really combines what I think is like serious sort of real-world hypothesizing, question-asking with a lot of shoe leather, data collection, theory, and sort of the best econometric methods to answer what I think are very important questions. So at the end of the day, his dissertation, or his job market paper, ends up revising what many people had thought was the effect of a very important policy change in Brazil. They had attributed this mechanization to be part of this policy change. In fact, Austin finds that a lot of what happened seems to be due to economic growth. So it's a fantastic dissertation, and I will say that, in fact, even after Austin got a terrific job in the Department of Economics at American University, that Yale has moved heaven and earth to get him there for 2 years as a postdoctoral scholar. And kudos to the dean at American who let him take this after having already negotiated that. So congratulations, Austin. We wish you the best.
And now we have Adam Deering, and on his behalf, Jin Pan.
Jeremy came all the way. So Jeremy came all the way from Rice to be a part of the celebration today, so I want to give him a chance to say a word too.
Thanks. Adam's field is industrial organization. In this field, you're supposed to become an expert about the industry you have studied. So let me tell you what he has studied during his time in Michigan. He's smiling already. He has studied the beer industry and the video game industry. So we know what he's good at. Okay, jokes aside, his research actually makes serious contributions to the literature. For example, his job market paper is about the welfare effect of price discrimination, taking into account the upstream firm's adjustment about the wholesale prices. In doing so, he actually also provided alternative explanation for a so-called uniform pricing puzzle. So very often we observe that chains with different stores selling the same product, they charge the same price, even though the stores face very different demand conditions. This sounds suboptimal, okay? And his dissertation says, actually, no, wait a second. If you consider the potential upstream firms' adjustment of wholesale prices, this decision can be rational and optimal. Okay, so it's serious contribution, even though it's about the fine industry that he studies. So Adam is a great researcher. He is creative, smart, and hardworking. With all these good attributes, he's going to become assistant professor at the Ohio State University. So congratulations.
Well, it's good to be back to congratulate Adam on this impressive accomplishment. Inge did a great job describing his research. I just think Adam has this tremendous talent for finding very important questions in I/O and answering them, with what end up being pretty convincing explanations, and that's a great talent to have. He's been around the University of Michigan for very many years. He was an undergrad here as well, so this is a big change in his life to finally go to leave. And on the other hand, he's probably driven on US 23 quite a few times, and I suppose he can just take the highway down to downtown Columbus, and he'll be at his new job. So congratulations, Adam.
Next, we have Edward Fox and Jim Hines.
Some couples, when they fall in love, they decide to take the plunge and get married. Ed Fox says, you're making a big mistake if that's how you do it. His law and economics dissertation looks at the determinants of marriage, and in particular, the extent to which the tax laws influence the likelihood that couples get married. And he looks in particular at a momentous 1948 change in the US income tax that did, as his research shows, have a significant effect on marriage rates. He has other papers as well, but the one that sticks in my head is the marriage paper. But he's got other work on corporate cash flow taxation and time-varying share price volatility and its implications. Ed was in graduate school here for 2 years, and then he decided he needed a break, so he went to Yale Law School for 3 years, and then clerked for a federal judge on the Ninth Circuit, and then came back this year and is now finishing, which would make it his 3rd year in graduate school, with us anyway. He is off to New York University Law School next year for a prestigious postdoctoral fellowship, and we're expecting great things subsequently.
Next graduate is Michael Gallman and his faculty advisor, Matthew Shapiro.
So Mike's dissertation is on new work using data science in macroeconomics, bringing big data to really big questions. And he's brought a combination of skills in computer science and economic modeling to give some discipline of parsimonious economic theory to basically sort out the question, why do people make decisions? Is it driven by the heterogeneity, driven by their difference in preferences and difference in their circumstances? And combining theory and evidence, you get convincing answers. It's been great working with Mike. He's part of a team that spans Michigan, Berkeley, and Arizona State, and he'll be returning home to take up a job at Claremont McKenna College in the fall. So congratulations, Mike.
Next, we have Alan Griffith and his faculty advisor, Jeff Smith.
Alan was actually referred to me originally not for the purpose of my advising his work, but for life advice. But I'm glad I'm glad that we ended up connecting, and I had a really great time being on his chairing, actually, his dissertation committee. He wrote a really interesting dissertation about network models, and it included something near and dear to my heart, which is the so-called within-study design, in which he was able to use a randomized controlled trial. In India, randomized controlled trials are oddly controversial in economics, but they're sometimes very useful. And he was able to use that to examine the predictive performance of his structural model to find a fine dissertation. And one of the things I like most about Alan's writing is that he used to be a lawyer. And because of that, he really is good at building a case. His papers read like a lawyer. I said this in my letter, actually. His cases read like a lawyer making a case. And now we've turned a lawyer into an economist. So this is good stuff indeed. And the best thing of all is that he has placed at my undergraduate alma mater, the University of Washington in Seattle. So go Huskies and go Alan. Well done.
Now we have Morris Hamilton and Sarah Miller as his faculty advisor.
It's been an honor to be on Morris's committee. I actually met him when I was a postdoc here at the University of Michigan. So I've been talking to him about his research for a while. Morris does work in what I think is, a really exciting area, and I think you probably will too if you read the newspaper or follow politics, which is health policy and health economics. And his dissertation looks at determinants of the opioid crisis, and in particular, the role that nurse practitioners may or may not have played in expanding access to opioids. So one thing I admire about Morris's research is he really goes in, he digs into the data, and in a way that kind of really lends a lot of credibility to his work, particularly like tracking down all the different laws that might have been changed a while ago and weren't well documented. He's really done a great job with that. So Morris will be joining Abt Associates this summer in North Carolina, and hopefully will continue his great work there. Congratulations, Morris.
Next, we have Morgan Henderson and Martha Bailey as his faculty advisor.
So Morgan Henderson, we have a lot of great economic historians at the University of Michigan, and we haven't produced a ton of students in economic history. This year we have 2 fantastic students, Morgan being one of them. And he's produced a fantastic dissertation on the effects of disenfranchisement, which is, I think, a really popular topic and a current policy interest, but it's hard to examine what the effects of disenfranchisement are in the long term. So Morgan looks back in U.S. history at this unique moment in the late 19th century when 23 states abruptly disenfranchised their non-citizen immigrants, and he looks at the effects of this disenfranchisement on both the first generation, where he doesn't find too much of an effect, and also on the long-run effects on their children, where he finds more substantial effects on educational attainment and income from earnings. So the other thing, Morgan has been deeply involved with this big data project that I'm working on, the LifeM project, since way before we knew it was going to be the big project that it has. So when we came back and we figured out we were going to go do this, Morgan ran into Big Data Camp. He helped us scrape millions of vital records, and he's been working so diligently to help us assemble all of these. And only now we are starting to produce the first papers out of this project, where also part of Morgan's dissertation. So I will say, as an advisor, that it breaks my heart a little bit to see someone as talented as Morgan leave academia. But I know that Amazon will benefit enormously from his talents. And when I saw the smile on his face when he came to tell me he wanted to take this offer, I knew that it was the right choice for him. So congratulations, Morgan. We look forward to seeing you.
Next, we have Julian Chu and Jeff Smith.
Occasionally it happens that students arrive here and they've been instructed by the people at their preceding institution about what to do upon their arrival in Lorch Hall. And Julian was one of those students. He had been informed by the folks at Cornell, where he did his undergraduate work, that he was supposed to go find me and inform me that we would be working together. And indeed he did, and we've had a lovely time. And you know, because of that, I've been talking to him continuously for 6 years. Hard to believe. Julian wrote a really nice dissertation using administrative data from a large Midwestern university about how students choose their majors. And that's an important topic, and actually something that's attracting a lot of attention at the intersection of labor economics and the economics of education these days. And I learned a lot from it and was really pleased by it. Completely unrelated to the dissertation, he performed a great service to the university by being one of the path-breaking researchers to use this university's administrative data, and I think ended up finding a lot of hidden landmines and things like that in the data, whose clearance will benefit generations of future researchers. As many of you know, this year's job market was challenging, and Julian gave us a bit of a scare. But at the end of the day, got a really excellent job at the College Board, and I'm super happy for him. So congratulations, Julian.
Now we have Sarah Johnston and her faculty advisor, Ying Fan.
I've known Sarah for years, ever since she started to become research assistant for me. She's really smart and hardworking. Her job market paper studies the effect of electricity volatility on energy-intensive manufacturing firms' decision about investment and production. So the key point of the paper is that when the electricity price in one area increases a little bit, well, maybe a lot, for a firm in that area, this firm is unlikely to move to a place where electricity prices are low because of all kinds of adjustment costs. As a result, the marginal productivity of capital may be different across plants in different geographic area, which is typically a sign of inefficiency in production allocation. So that's the key point, and to make this point clear in empirically, she combined data on electricity prices and plant level plan year level US census data. And if you have ever worked with census data, you know what kind of stamina she has in doing research. Okay, this is a really cool project that contributes to 3 fields: industrial organization, environmental economics, and even a little bit macroeconomics. So Sarah is going to be a postdoc at University of Wisconsin, and I'm sure that she will continue with the good work. So congratulations.
Next, we have my personal favorite graduate, Salma Khalid, and her faculty advisor, Ach Advaryu.
Well, congratulations, and I'm learning for the first time about your tremendous service today, too, so that's very impressive. Yeah, I don't know about that. Salma came to me a few years ago, and it's been my pleasure to serve on her committee. In the first conversation we had, she discussed some of her prior experience working at the World Bank and the sort of experiments or a series of experiments that she was proposing in Pakistan, and sort of I came away from the meeting with a few things. One was it was very difficult to keep pace with Salma when she talks to you because she talks extremely fast, and so she really knows what she's talking about, and you sort of have to zone in 100%, which is hard for me. The second was I thought, wow, this is an incredibly ambitious experiment for a graduate student to be running across, hundreds of villages in rural Pakistan, following thousands of individuals over time and nesting several randomized control trials. So I was a little bit dubious of, any graduate student's ability, or for, that matter, any junior faculty's ability to pull off that kind of thing. But Salma's done it, which speaks to her incredible, ability as a researcher, and it speaks to her sort of dedication, to the craft. And I think she's come up with a really interesting set of results. Her job market paper basically looks at the intriguing question of, do we make the same choices in public as we do in private? And it turns out that, as you might suspect, we don't. And when people make the same kind of choice in public, they tend to conform more to the group's sort of expectation of them. And I think that's really interesting in Salma's particular context, because it speaks to the puzzle in development economics of why do we see such low adoption of health products and other types of products that have proven to be very effective. And I think she really is able to comment on this from the group dynamics perspective. She'll be joining the IMF next year, and I wish her the absolute best, and I hope that we continue to stay in touch, and please, you're welcome at Michigan anytime.
Next, we have Ben Meiselman and his faculty advisor, Jim Hines.
Has anyone here ever been to Detroit? If you go, my advice is to deny that you know Ben Meiselman. The reason is that Ben, for his dissertation, they have an issue in Detroit, which is that people don't pay their city income tax. Lots of people don't pay it. Ben partnered with the city of Detroit to try to increase city income tax compliance rates. They sent, randomized letters to people, trying to see what would work to encourage people to actually start paying their city income tax. Detroit is one of 60 Michigan cities, by the way, with a city income tax, but evidently some residents don't know it or prefer not to know it. Anyway, what Ben found was that reminders of the penalties for non-payment had an effect on people's subsequent compliance, whereas things like appealing to civic pride did not. We are an economics department, after all. Ben's dissertation had other papers, too, on financial regulation and on the economics of renewable fuel standards. Ben took a year off in graduate school to go to Washington to the Council of Economic Advisors, where he was on the staff from 2012 to 2013. And after graduating this year, he's off to Johns Hopkins University on a postdoctoral fellowship. Congratulations, Ben.
Next, we have Alexander Persod and Paul Roddy as his faculty advisor.
So it's a real pleasure to say words of praise for Alexander. He's doing an economic history dissertation on South-South migration or indentured servant migration from India. 2 points to know about him. He has a real traveling bug. And second, he is a genuine Jeopardy champion. So we have a bunch of wannabes. He's the real deal. I will phrase my responses now in this format. Georgetown, Guyana, Canberra, Australia, Kingston, Jamaica, places where Alexander has gone to collect data. Port of Spain, Trinidad, Syracuse, New York, Washington, D.C., other places that Alexander has gone to collect data. I wrote letters for each of these things. Royal Holloway, England, this is where he won the Best New Researcher Prize for his work on his paper on risk and migration from India. He has collected hundreds of thousands of individual observations on indentured servant contracts, linked them up to the areas where people came from in India, linked them up to the areas where people left in various sugar-producing estates, and really done path-breaking work on South-South migration. It's really been a great pleasure to be your advisor. I wish you the very best on the journey ahead. He's, again, a 5-year student, and he's going to a job at the University of North Carolina, Asheville. So thank you.
Next, we have Daniel Shafak and his faculty advisor, Jim Hines.
Many people in this room feel that they've received extensive education from the University of Michigan. Not like Danny Shaffa, you haven't. When Danny gets his PhD, it will be his 6th University of Michigan degree. He has a bachelor's degree in economics, a master's degree in economics, a master's of accounting, a master's of science in mathematics, a Juris Doctor degree, law degree, and the PhD in economics. Danny started our economics PhD program. You're not supposed to do anything, Danny. He started the economics program, did 1 year, and then he went to law school, and then he came back. So he is now finishing his 4th year in our program and getting the degree. Oh, and by the way, while he was doing those 4 years in economics, he got a master's in mathematics along the way. He wrote a brilliant dissertation on Pigouvian taxation and corporate tax disclosure, and starting in the fall, he is going to be an assistant professor at the University of Richmond Law School. Congratulations.
Next, we have Alfredo Sosa and Jeff Smith as his faculty advisor.
Aww. Alfredo came to me via the education school, where he's also getting a doctorate, and he took my applied econometrics class and did well, and I helped him get into our department, and he wrote a very fine dissertation on the effect of taking mathematics in high school, which is a topic that a lot of people care about, and there's an extensive literature, and Alfredo has added materially to it. He also performed a great public service by collecting a data set on all of the laws in the different states in the United States related to increasing the supply of teachers who could teach courses in science, technology, engineering, and math. And he's going to make that data available to other researchers as well as himself, which is a pretty nice thing to do. More generally, Alfredo is one of the most sincere and earnest scholars I have ever met, and it's been an honor to work with him. Congratulations, Alfredo.
That was cute. Okay. Next, we have Brian Stewart and Martha Bailey again as his faculty advisor.
So it's been a really fun year for me, as you can tell. I have 4 amazing students and a lot of other committees I'm serving on. But I think, as many of the students know, I think the faculty know, I don't think students are typically advised by just one person, even though one person gets to stand up here and talk about them. It sort of takes a village. And Brian Stewart's dissertation, I think, is an excellent example of this, is that I became his faculty chair. I'm not sure how, but in that sense, I think he's benefited from all of the faculty members. He's been extremely active. So just to let you know a little bit about how productive and broad Brian has been, he's got 5 co-authored papers, all very top caliber. He's got one with David L. Bowie, who's a faculty member here until very recently, another one with Joel Slemrod and Stefan Nagel, 2 other papers with Evan Taylor, who's also going to come up here, and you'll hear about their work, I think, in just a moment, relating to the Great Migration. So it's a combination of a little bit of economic history with applied microeconometrics. And also another paper with me and John DiNardo on the highest minimum wage of the 20th century, which happened under the Fair Labor Standards Act in 1966. So Brian has been amazingly productive, and given how much other stuff he's done while he's been in graduate school, I think it's just amazing that he has such a high-quality job market paper as well. So, and it's particularly timely. What he does is try to quantify the long-term effects, the scarring effects of the double-dip recession that happened in the late 1970s, early 1980s on local labor markets. And this goes to one of those really big and hard-to-answer questions in economics, is how costly are recessions? And how do we kind of get our hands around that empirically? So one of the things Brian's job market paper does is he uses a trade shock that tended to affect certain places all over the United States that had certain types of goods that were traded internationally. And when there was a big interest rate shift, it dramatically affected those prices. And he finds that this was devastating for those local economies. And in contrast to the arguments that have been made by a lot of very prominent economists, I will say this is controversial, is that Brian finds that there are really big persistent effects on those places. Now, how big are the long-run effects of this particular recession? He goes back through using large-scale administrative data in the RDC, where he spent months with no windows, toiling away in this cave at the bottom of ISR, to find that there are, in fact, very big effects on the children who he knows were living in those places when they were younger. So it's a fantastic dissertation. Brian is off, hold on a minute, I'm having a moment. I'm sorry, to George Washington to George Washington as an assistant professor this fall, but we hope to see him back because we have the RDC here, so we hope he comes and visits. Okay, congratulations.
Next, we have Christopher Sullivan and Ying Pan as his faculty advisor.
Chris has a paper about my favorite food, ice cream. His paper studies firms' collusion on product space. So there's a large literature about collusion in pricing, but firms may also collude on what kind of products to put in the market. And so his paper fills the gap in the literature by studying this topic. The paper makes both theoretical and empirical contributions. I could go on and on about the theoretical contribution, but you probably want to eventually go to the reception. So I'm going to jump to the empirical part right away, ice cream. The paper has many interesting findings, and in my mind, the most interesting finding is that if antitrust authorities ignore collusion on product space and shut down pricing collusion, consumers can actually be worse off. This is because when pricing collusion is shut down, firms would like to avoid fierce pricing competition. They react by putting less products in the market and really separate their products. As a result, consumers are actually worse off. So this result I find is both surprising and intuitive. This is really a great paper. It has been a really fun experience advising Chris, and he is now leaving us to University of Wisconsin as assistant professor. I will really miss Chris because every time he presented the paper, he brought 2 delicious ice cream cakes. So I'm really sad that he's leaving. I'm also really happy that he's going to Wisconsin. Congratulations.
Next, we have Evan Taylor, who is not only graduating, he also got married yesterday. And his faculty advisor, Jeff Smith.
Let me start by seconding something that Martha said. For people, parents and friends and things who are here and may not know better, you might imagine from the stream of people who's come up here that we have only 6 faculty members in this department. That is in fact not the case. I think certainly relative to the training I got, Michigan's PhD program is distinctive, particularly in the subfields I'm familiar with, for sort of doing an it takes a village approach, where it's not just about who's your dissertation chair, but it's about who else is on your committee, and indeed about the entire faculty more generally. And I think that's a strong feature of the program here. Evan came to me, I suppose, in a sense, via my good friend Dan Black at the Harris School at Chicago, with whom he has written papers. And I have had a good time being on his committee. He wrote a really nice job market paper using methods based on what are called marginal treatment effects, which were developed by Jim Heckman and some of his more recent students, and applied in a historical context. Evan has a unique set of interests that combine economic history, demography, and applied econometric methods. And these are not always a set of things that go together, and I think it's a powerful combination. We have a paper together, which I quite like, on applied econometric methods. And in keeping with the marginal treatment effect theme and so on, he is taking a postdoc after much vetting that included a vetting of me and a vetting of Evan. We both had to answer questions of the form, are you sure that Evan will be okay if Mr. Heckman calls him at 2 in the morning and asks where the output is? And I said yes, and I gather that he said yes as well. And so he's off to work with my former dissertation advisor, Jim Heckman, at Chicago, and a very prestigious postdoc. So congratulations on many dimensions to Evan.
Next graduate is Benjamin Thompson, and Ach Advaryu for his faculty advisor.
So I was very happy to serve on Ben's committee. Ben came to me a few years back, and I think having served previously on his former roommate's committee, his former roommate might have over-advertised me. So I think he might have opened the floodgates a little bit. Ben, but I've had a really great time working with Ben. Ben's dissertation is on a really important, the really important topic of pensions for the elderly in low-income contexts, and he uses the very prominent example of the elderly pension in Brazil, and he shows something really interesting, which is that even though there's no retirement requirement to be eligible for the pension in Brazil, basically what he finds is that within a month of being eligible, meaning turning the right age, elderly folks retire at very high, with very high probability when they start receiving the pension. And so Ben's job market paper basically goes into how a combination of credit constraints and the generosity of the pension might lead to that kind of outcome, and then what that says about what the optimal design of pension policies should look like when large fractions of population tend to be credit constrained. So I think it's really important work. I just want to say on a personal note, I have a student who I advise with a co-advisor at USC who came out to spend some time at Michigan, work with me, and I wanted to get her to meet some of the other graduate students, and I really have to say Ben and Austin and others really sort of Alexander really sort of took her under their wing and really made her feel part of the Michigan community. So I really appreciated that as well. It's very nice. Ben's heading to Amazon, and we will all be jealous of the beautiful time that he'll be having in Seattle there. So best of luck, and hope to see you soon.
Now Evan Wright and his faculty advisor, Ying Pan.
So I have been on this stage a couple of times. You probably have figured out a common theme, which is my students do really fun things, even though I myself is quite boring. Okay. Anyway, Evan is no exception. Evan's job market paper studies an interesting and somewhat new market, crowdfunding. So crowdfunding firms basically provide a platform for entrepreneurs to advertise their new product and to raise funds. And for this project, Evan collected data on his own from a major crowdfunding platform, Kickstarter, and using this data set, he basically established several interesting data patterns. For example, the number of backers increases over time and then drop after a goal is reached. So the second data pattern is quite puzzling. How do we explain that? He has an answer. He provided a very intuitive dynamic model to explain that. It has been really a fun experience advising Evan, and he's going to join Bank of America. So congratulations.
Next, we have Carrie Wanjing Xu and her faculty advisor, Erin Krupka.
It's my pleasure to be here and to welcome Carrie into our community. I've known Carrie for 6 years, so we talked a little bit about the 6-year versus the 5-year model. Let me give you some context on Carrie's 6 years. She's not just graduating here, she's also graduating at the School of Information, which is just down the street. Because Carrie is a path breaker, she decided she was going to apply to both programs, and she was going to do both programs, which is what she's done. So Carrie and I are going to dash off after this and welcome her into the School of Information's community as well. Carrie, along the way, wrote a beautiful dissertation that bridges the gap, bridges really both sets of skills and both interests, schools' interests. The economics department applying the skill sets that she gained here and the training that she has here, along with some of the training and interests and skill sets that come from studying information, people, and technology. Her dissertation looks at peer effects, and in particular peer effects in classrooms, and how students learn from one another. She does this in 3 different essays. I'll focus just on one key insight for you that I find particularly interesting and for myself as an educator, very informative. And that is that Carrie looks at how the relationships of you in class with other students impacts your learning outcomes. And in particular, what she shows is that through a simple piece of technology, namely a little applet that allows people to study quiz questions, that there's a spreading of knowledge and ability through the use of this applet. And that in fact, the spreading is not the spreading of, hey, you should find out about this applet. It's not about information. It's about behavior. Hey, we should study for an hour. So she identifies not only how the relationships, the social relationships, the studying relationships in a classroom impact behavior, but also uncovers the mechanism, which is through behavior change rather than information transmission. Carrie, it's my great pleasure to see you here today. It's my great pleasure to welcome you into our community and academia. Carrie goes on after an incredibly competitive market. She entertained many offers, but she settled on Vanguard Research, where she will be doing research on your portfolio, retirement portfolios. Thank you.
Next, we have Yiran Zhang and Ying Fan as his faculty advisor.
Yiyuan's research is about something very important, environment. His dissertation consists of 3 chapters, all of the 3 chapters centered around a key question in environmental economics. What are the economic and environmental effects of a specific environmental policy or how a market is organized? Each chapter answers a very important question. They are all well written and fun to read. I could go on and on for hours about this paper, but I'm going to limit myself to saying that the interaction with Yiyuan has been a 2-way interaction. I would like to believe that I have contributed and provided good suggestions to his research, but what I can tell you with certainty is that I learned a lot from Yiyuan, especially about environmental economics and, let me try that, Kirchhoff laws. Did I say that right? If you want to know what that is, you should ask him. He knows a lot about that. After graduation, Yiyuan is going to join the analysis group. I'm sure that he will bring his economic training into the real-world problems. Congratulations.
And our final graduate, Xiaoqing Zhou, and Lutz Kilian as her faculty advisor.
After 20 years at Michigan, you realize that sometimes PhD students love Michigan so much that without a little nudge to finish their thesis, they might stay here forever. Now, that's not the case of Xiaoqing. She crossed that finishing line on her own power and left her committee, all members of the committee, impressed. And the reason we were impressed is because of the way she blended data work, serious regression analysis, and quantitative theory. When I say quantitative theory, I don't mean having a theoretical model added on for decoration, but actually using that model to understand data, to understand what's actually going on in the data. And that's something that's in the best tradition of schools like Minnesota or Penn. And she combines that with the best tradition of Michigan, which is to focus on data and to focus on regression analysis. Now, she does that in order to understand housing decisions, consumption decisions in many different contexts in many different countries. But in addition to this line of work, 3 essays that are all single-authored, she's also done work on very different topics. She has 3 joint papers on topics such as whether the spread between gasoline and diesel prices and crude oil prices is helpful for predicting oil prices, on the question of how to quantify the discretionary income effects of oil price shocks, and finally, how to measure global real activity if you're interested in modeling commodity markets. So I'm confident that she will do a very good job at the Bank of Canada, where she's going to start in the fall, and I wish you best of luck.
Well, congratulations to all PhD graduates. Now we're going to proceed with the... And now please welcome John Leitner, Director of the MAE Studies.
Okay, I'm John Leitner. I'm the current director of the MAE program, professor of economics. I'm here especially to welcome the MAE students and their guests to the graduation ceremony. For those of you not as familiar with the MAE program, it's usually 3 or 4 semesters. That'd be 1.5 years to 2 years at Michigan. We have a huge diversity of interests in the student body. Some come with a job in government sector and go back to that job afterwards, and they have very focused needs and things that they want to study. Many of the students come right out of undergraduate, and many will go into the private sector, either in the U.S. or their home country. And Michigan's program is unique, I think, in its flexibility. So we have a core of courses in economics, and then we try to make use of the fact that Michigan is a big school with many fine departments and parts to it. And so we allow students to take classes in other schools and departments. Many, for example, use the business school finance courses and so on. So I have taught, I think, probably all of the students graduating here today in macroeconomic theory, and I can attest these are excellent students. And it's, I enjoy teaching in the program. The students come well prepared, and they like learning as I do, so it works out well. Let me, we have to keep moving along here. Let me make 3 comments. I hope all the students, including all the MAE students, will come to the reception afterwards. It's right upstairs in Foster, right above this. Secondly, Julie, the department, or the MAE program administrator, has sent you a survey, a brief survey as you graduate, online. I hope you'll take the time to fill that out. We really appreciate that. And that goes with the third remark. I hope you'll stay in touch with the program as you leave. We have a network of graduates, and we'd like to include you in it, and we hope it'll be mutually beneficial. So the way we're going to do this is I have my colleague Heng Liu is going to read the names, and I'll stand over here and hand you the certificate and congratulate you. And then Paul Rohde also wants to shake hands and and congratulate you. And so maybe we can get people to file around and out by the podium. So I congratulate the class, the MAE class, and as I say, I hope I'll see you all at the reception and that you'll stay in touch with the program. Thank you. Okay, Hank, you want to read the names?
Chen Hongyou, Li Yang, Fan Xiaoxiao, Benjamin Haley, congratulations. Huang Jingyi, congratulations. Huang Xinlie. Rusa Nura Izel. Liu Ranran. Liu Xin. Mamta Pimoli. 屈仁燕。Kubra Sargent. Shen Han Xiao. Tang Runtian. Wu Yijun. Xin Zikuo. Alper Yatman.
So I wanted to close the ceremony. I wanted to first thank the staff that worked with students, Julie, Laura, and Lauren. They do a tremendous job. They really help the program run beautifully, so thank them. I wanted to thank the parents for being so supportive of the time that their students are here. I know the students drive a lot of their own activities, but they have to have a sounding board and to be able to explain their work. And so thanks to you for all of your support. So, there's an opportunity to have a joint picture up here together, so you can take advantage of that at the end of the ceremony. And then the final thing I've been told to remind you, I don't know, countless times, is that there is a reception upstairs, so please take advantage of that as well and mingle and get to know each other. So thank you.